Good day, distinguished conference delegates, colleagues, and fellow researchers. It is an honor to present this paper at the 23rd International Conference on Sustainable Development. My presentation focuses on performance management system in South African municipalities, with particular attention to performance and implementation challenges. I present the paper on behalf of myself, Ryder Machete, and my co-author, Professor Shikha Vyas-Doorgapersad from the University of Johannesburg. The central argument is straightforward but important. Performance management is not simply a technical reporting tool. In local government, it is one of the mechanisms through which governance, accountability, and service delivery are translated into practical outcomes for communities. And as I proceed, I will link the article's academic contribution to the current South African municipalities context. To begin with the presentation is intentionally structured to what you will receive in the next few slides. First, you should it should explain why municipal performance management matters within the sustainable development debate. Secondly, it clarifies what the article contributes through a literature-based and document analysis approach. And thirdly, it translates the argument into a practical implication for municipalities, policy actors, and governance practitioners. So this is important because the OIDA conference is interdisciplinary and practice-facing. The audience is not only interested in theory, but also in how research can actually help to real developmental challenges. So accordingly, the presentation moves from context to method, to findings, and finally to implementable recommendations. Well, the study matters because local government is the sphere where citizens most directly encounter the state. When a municipality performs well, communities experience this through reliable water, sanitation, electricity, roads, waste management, and responsive administration. So conversely, when performance management systems are weak, poor planning, poor data, weak consequence management, as well as unclear responsibilities become visible in everyday service delivery frustration. And we have seen in recent audit reporting in the country, South Africa, confirming the seriousness of this issue. The South African Auditor General's 2023-2024 local government report has actually indicated that only a very minority of municipalities achieved clean audits, and that many municipalities still had material findings on their published performance report. So therefore, the article speaks to a live governance challenge. And how can performance management move from reporting ritual into a credible mechanism for improved service municipal outcomes? And of course, having established the relevance of the study, the next point is focus of the article is how the paper examines performance management system in South African municipalities and how it is not merely an isolated HR exercise, but as a governance instrument. So the articles reviews the meaning and the importance of performance management. It discusses the legislative and the policy context. It identifies benefits and implementation challenges, and it considers the essential components that, of course, support effectiveness and efficiency. So in that sense, the research logic is both conceptual and practical. Conceptually, of course, you will locate performance management within the performance administration and new public management debates. And practically, it asks what prevents municipalities from using performance management system effectively to improve municipal accountability as well as service delivery. This conceptual foundation of the article is that performance management is closely associated with new public management reforms. And in simple terms, new public management introduced a strong emphasis on efficiency, measurable outputs, managerial accountability, and service delivery improvement. However, the article does not treat these as a pure private sector import, but rather it shows that in municipalities, performance management must connect organizational strategy with employee performance as well as community-facing outcomes. And of course, this is why this article discusses three related models: performance management as a system for managing organizational performance management as a system that integrates the two. So the most useful approach for municipalities in the integrated model, because service delivery depends on both institutional systems and human capability. So it is therefore highlighted, or rather alluded, that the most useful would be the integrated model of both the new public management as well as the performance management system as a system for managing employee performance. So methodologically, the study is qualitative and uses secondary data. So this is an important to state for an academic audience, of course, because the value of the article rests on synthesis, interpretation, as well as conceptual clarification rather than primary field work. So these articles relies on publicly accessible resources, including scholarly literature, municipal integrated development, planning documents, as well as performance-related publications. So in this regard, there were no interviews or questionnaire conducted, and therefore there was no direct human interaction in the conduction of the study. The documents were evaluated through document analysis. This method is appropriate because performance management in municipalities is shaped by a network of legislation, policy frameworks, institutional reports, municipal plans, and scholarly debates. So in other words, the articles examines the documentary evidence through which municipalities performance management is designed and justified and ultimately assessed. So the article's faced major analytical point is that performance management must be understood as a continuous cycle. It begins with planning, clarifying strategies, setting objectives, defining work plans, and agreeing on indicators. And then it moves into implementation, where senior managers provide feedback, provide support, provide coaching and resources to the staff, employees at large. And then thereafter, the results are assessed against agreed expectations, and of course, in line with KPIs. Finally, the evidence must be used to improve future performance. And this is where many organizations struggle. They may complete the forms, but not necessarily use the system as a management and learning process. So in municipalities, this is particularly serious because weak performance management affects not only internal administration, but also communities, of course, who rely on municipal services. Therefore, the system must connect strategy. It must connect departmental outputs, employee work plans, and corrective actions. So these slides draws from the performance evidence discussed in the article. The important point here is not only which municipalities perform better or worse, but the variation tells us about the role of municipal performance management. And in that, municipal performance is multidimensional. It includes planning, service delivery, economic development, as well as leadership administration. And a municipality may perform adequately in an area, but still faces weaknesses in other areas. So therefore, performance management should be diagnostic. It should help municipal leaders identify where the problem sits and why targets are missed, whether the problem is capacity, whether the problem is resources, and whether the problem is data quality or weak accountability. So in practical terms, a good performance management system should tell managers not only that performance has declined, but what action must be taken to actually improve it. And then we see that the article identifies several challenges that hamper effective performance management implementation. The first is weak assessment and recording of relevant information. The entire systems becomes questionable. And secondly, there may be low engagement by line managers and employees, particularly where performance reviews are experienced as a bureaucratic compliance rather than a developmental support. Thirdly, weak monitoring makes it difficult to keep the process on track. Fourthly, unfair standards and inconsistencies in ratings undermine the trust between the employer as well as the employee. Fifthly, poor communication weakens feedback and goal alignment. And finally, we have seen that organizational culture and leadership style matters the most. So a municipality can have a well-written performance management systems policy, but if the culture does not support transparency, does not support accountability and learning, the system will not introduce or produce meaningful, tangible improvement. So to make the article practically relatable, we connect it to the recent South African developments. And of course, the South African Auditor General on the local government reporting continues to point persistent weaknesses in audit outcomes and performance reporting. So this is directly relevant to the article's argument about credible information and quality assurance. And in addition, government reporting on the state municipality has highlighted the risks such as unfunded budget, unauthorized expenditure, and water and electricity losses. So these are not merely financial issues, but they are also performance management related issues because they affect targets, they affect the resources of the municipalities, and the overall municipal service delivery. And finally, the recent SCOPA focus. SCOPA is this Standing Committee on Public Accounts in South Africa. The focus on the city of Tshwane and eThekwini illustrate that weak performance systems can attract parliamentary oversight and investigation. And the practical lesson here is that performance management must operate as an early warning and accountability systems to the local sphere or the municipalities at large. So the article's improvement message can be summarized as a shift from compliance reporting to performance learning. So in compliance only system, the municipality mainly asks whether forms were completed, whether reports were submitted on time, and whether indicators were listed. And that approach is necessarily, but it's insufficient. More should be done. That is why performance learning systems will ask even more deeper questions. Is the evidence reliable? Are the indicators specific and measurable? Did management act when performance deteriorated? And was corrective action assigned, monitored, and closed? So, for example, if a service delivery and budget implementation plan shows that water losses are worsening and the performance system should not simply record the deviation, it should trigger verification. The root cause analysis should be conducted, and a corrective plan as well as responsible officials must be made aware. Timeframes and oversight by the municipal council and relevant committees is paramount at that point. So based on the article, the practical recommendations derived are as follows. First, municipalities should strengthen quality assurance so that performance reports are checked by line managers before submission. Secondly, indicators should follow the SMART principle. They must be specific, they must be measurable, they must be attainable, they must be relevant as well as time-bound, but most importantly, indicators must be independent. Thirdly, capacity development is important and essential. Officials need training, not only in competing templates, but also in evidence standards, interpretation, dashboards, and corrective action. Fourthly, leadership commitment is crucial. Senior managers must model accountability and ensure that feedback leads to improvement. Fifthly, digital monitoring can also be utilized in this manner. And finally, culture change is required. Performance management should be understood as a tool for learning, accountability, and public value, and not merely as an administrative obligation. So in conclusion, the article contributes to sustainable development governance by showing that performance management is more than an internal administrative requirement. It is a bridge between policy intentions and the lived experience of communities. So where the system is credible, municipalities are better positioned to aim and align plans and align resources and people as well as outcomes. And where systems are weak, performance reporting becomes detached from service delivery improvement. So the key lesson is that South African municipalities require performance management systems that produce reliable evidence, support feedback, and strengthen quality assurance and trigger corrective actions. So therefore, improving PMS implementation is not only a matter of technical compliance, it is also a governance and sustainable development imperative. Thank you very much for your attention.